Hey guys, I'm the Emerald Patriot and welcome to my first ever comic book review. Now because it is my first ever review, I knew I had to pick something a bit special to pop that comic book review cherry. So today, we're going to be going with a fairly recent story arc and we're going to be taking a look at Night of the Living Deadpool. So I chose Night of the Living Deadpool to be my first comic book review because I feel I've been giving DC a lot of love recently. You know, with all the Infinite Crisis videos, and now it's about time that I give Marvel some love too. Straight away, before even reading this, I love it, just because it pays homage to the Night of the Living Dead horror movie. And I love that film because it was my introduction to zombies, and I did see it at a very young age courtesy of my brother, and yes, it did scare the crap out of me. In fact, thinking back, he showed me a lot of 18 or 15 rated horror films while I was still in single digits, so maybe he was just trying to be a dick and traumatise me. But anyway, let's crack on with my review of Night of the Living Deadpool. Our story begins with the zombies already in full swing. The streets are deserted, cars and houses have all been abandoned, and then we come across a restaurant that's got our favourite anti-hero Deadpool fast asleep in. It turns out Deadpool has actually slept through the start and most of the zombie apocalypse. How did he do this? With chimichangas, of course. Deadpool attended an all-you-can-eat chimichanga event and fell into a full-on food coma. This is a parody of Rick from the Walking Dead franchise being in a coma after he was shot in the line of duty, and he also missed the beginning of the end. Something that this miniseries does very well is parody these otherwise dreadful moments from other zombie franchises. Though I did notice there were more parodies based around The Walking Dead than any other franchise. Now this could just be me missing bits and pieces, or it could be that The Walking Dead is so fresh in my mind I identified these parodies quicker. Another quick thing to point out is the artwork. I love how everything is black and white bar Deadpool. It really gives that classic horror feel, but shows us that even during the zombie apocalypse, we can never take Deadpool too seriously. So, Deadpool's now woken from the food coma. What's next? Well, he stumbles outside and notices that no one's around. He does, however, find a note addressed to him, which basically says, "We couldn't wake you up, so because you were a loyal customer, we locked you in to keep you safe." Deadpool looks out into the empty streets and simply sings, "I think we're alone now." Yeah, sorry guys, I'm Bristolian, I'm tone deaf. You're just gonna have to live with that. As Deadpool moves through the abandoned streets, he tries to recall what happened before he fell asleep. He then realises that there were signs the apocalypse was coming. He just wasn't paying that much attention. Now, let's take another look at the artwork here. I love again how they've put the panels that were set before the outbreak in full colour. This is a really nice little touch. Lets you know when Deadpool's recollecting stuff in the past and when, you know, he's in present time. Awesome job. Love that someone thought of this idea at Marvel. Kudos. After collecting his thoughts for a moment, Deadpool comes to the realisation that he could be the last man alive. And it's at that moment he simply states, "Watch out ladies, my stock is rising." And so, his search begins. Deadpool soon stumbles across his first zombie, pun completely intended. But it seems these zombies, they're a little bit different from the classic zombie you may be thinking of. These zombies are still self-aware, but not in control of their actions. Basically, if you don't quite understand what I mean, think about it like this. You are still you. You can still think, see, hear, even speak. And worst of all, you can still taste absolutely everything. However, you are rotting, you're falling apart, and you are not in control of your own actions. Doing what we all should do in this situation, Deadpool quickly decapitates the zombie, but the head continues to talk to him, begging him not to use his gun. Unfortunately, it's already too late. Deadpool's drawn the attention of every zombie in the area. Whoops. Now we get to the stuff you expect. Tons of hacking, slashing, but these zombies, they appear to be too much for Deadpool's abilities. That is, until he's saved by a group of survivors. As the story and, of course, the parody moments all progress, we actually learn all the superheroes, they've now died. They all died trying to stop the zombie outbreak. And now, he's alone. Deadpool may be humanity's last hope. Eventually, the survivors who saved Deadpool, they become zombies. And Deadpool himself, he even gets bitten. But, luckily enough, Deadpool's got a healing factor. His healing factor kicks in and he doesn't turn. He's not affected by the bite. Perhaps he is humanity's last hope. This brings Deadpool to the town of Harper's Ferry, a safe haven amidst all the chaos. But more importantly to Deadpool, there be ladies. Oh yeah. During his time in the town, a couple of key things happen. Number 1, he notices that his bite, it's still causing him pain, but he's fully healed. Can't be good, right? Number 2, he's not the only superhero who survived. The local kids, they claim to have seen the superhero costume hidden away by one of the town's residents. So what does that mean for Deadpool? The answer is simple, people. It's time for a team up. Well, it turns out whoever this guy is, he's certainly no superhero. Deadpool recognises the attire as that belonging to an AIM scientist. For those of you who don't know, AIM, they're one of the big bad evil organisations that operate within the Marvel Universe. Anyway, Deadpool wants answers, and now he knows someone that can give them to him. So he decides to have a friendly chat with Clarence, the AIM scientist. Of course, you know Deadpool, he can't resist wearing the hazmat suit. I mean, come on, this is Deadpool. You do not expect him to take all of this seriously, do you? Clarence explains that the zombie apocalypse was all his fault. He claims he was both a scientist and a believer. What he was doing was for the betterment of mankind, and he was actually part of AIR, which is an offshoot of AIM. AIR stands for Advanced Ideas and Regeneration. They were trying to better understand healing properties, for example those of Deadpool's. And let's be honest, you can all guess how this turns out. Yup, ding ding ding, zombies. Well, turns out AIR had actually been using Deadpool's blood to run their experiments. They got the blood from collecting samples from places that Deadpool had been injured. Once he's finished his conversation with Clarence, Deadpool heads to bed. Later that night, however, he wakes from his slumber, and something doesn't quite feel right. At first, Deadpool thinks he's just sleepwalking. But wait a minute. He's become a zombie. His healing factor, how could this have happened? He begins his rampage of Harper's Ferry. Pretty much, as soon as he's infected the whole town, however, his healing factor begins to kick in again, and purges the infection from his body. That's it, he's normal again. Well, as normal as it can be to be Deadpool. But now, he's in a town surrounded by those he just infected. Deadpool does sum this moment up pretty well, just by saying, "Who knew the zombie apocalypse would feel like such a kick in the jewels?" This begins the conclusion to Night of the Living Deadpool. We only see the aftermath of the battle between the town and Deadpool. Deadpool knows this is all his fault. He now wants to set things right, but to do that he's going to need help. Cue Clarence. Okay, so Clarence is now a zombie, but Deadpool needs him. Or at least part of him. Yep, that's right, these zombies, they can still talk, so Deadpool, he just needs their head. So our two heroes begin their journey to save humanity. All in all, they have a good time, and I'd say it actually looks like a pretty fun trip. They eventually get to the air research facility where, yes, Deadpool is using Clarence's head as a weapon. But after this epic battle, however, Clarence, he can't go on no more. You see, his last act was carrying a torch on behalf of Deadpool, and now his jaw has almost completely liquefied. Our anti-hero speaks some kind words to his companion before putting him out of his misery, and they are: every time a 9mm rings, an angel gets its wings. This is all on Deadpool now. He is the world's last hope. Once Deadpool enters the lab, he realises he has no one to help him. How can he think to develop a cure for this? Not only that, but now he's just flat out of time. Well, Deadpool's plan, as he calls it, is an act of desperation. He drinks the healing factor the scientists had collected and aims to go out in a blaze of glory, Young Gun style. Deadpool does what he can, but eventually he relies on that good old-fashioned saying, if you can't beat 'em, let 'em eat you alive. Well, this actually had an unexpected turn. You see, any zombie who took a bite of Deadpool lost their appetite for flesh. This may all sound well and good, but they also forgot who they were, as they all mentally became Deadpool. Each one began to believe that they were the original Deadpool, and each one now had his healing factor. Every time a zombie bit one of these new Deadpools, they themselves became a Deadpool, and so it spread one bite at a time. Well, that's the end of our story, at least for the time being. At the moment, Marvel are currently releasing Return of the Living Deadpool. So if you want to know what happens next, be sure to check back once Return the Living Deadpool has concluded. Now though, it's time for the review of Night of the Living Deadpool. So, what was my rating of this bad boy miniseries right here? Well, it took me a bit of time to actually work out how I wanted to do the ratings for these books. I've decided to go with the following system, which I hope works kind of well. I'm going to base my score on 5 key areas that I think each comic book should have. And that's 1, the accessibility to new readers. 2, the artwork. 3, the general plot of the book. 4, the story pacing. And finally, 5, the conclusion. So each comic can score 20 points in these areas. And you've probably guessed it, but 5 times 20 equals 100. Well, we're going to take those 100 points, and we're then going to divide that by 10. And like in D&D, we're going to round that number down, giving us an overall score out of 10. So, what's the score of Night of the Living Deadpool look like? It's got to shamble away with something, right? Well, accessibility to new readers. I think anyone who enjoys anything zombie related will enjoy this book. There's no real backstory needed. However, a couple of small things are mentioned, such as aim, who a new reader might not understand, as they are just glanced over. Nonetheless though, for accessibility, Night of the Living Deadpool is getting 18 out of 20. Okay, artwork. Now, you all were going to guess this. It's going to score top marks, because as I've already said, I love the art style in this book. They just absolutely nailed it. So, 20 out of 20. Nicely done. The general plot. The plot is simple and fun, and it's what a Deadpool comic should be. I'm going to score it high just because of that. But at the same time, it's not very original. So you are getting docked a couple of points. It's going to be 18 out of 20 again. Story pacing. This miniseries is actually comprised of 4 books. I found issue number 1, I should say, there's not more than one. Issue number 1 and issue number 4 were perfect with their pacing. However, issue 2 and issue 3 did have a couple of moments where it did slow down for a couple of pages, but then thankfully it picked up the pace again. So for story pacing, 15 out of 20. Conclusion. Okay, this one's going to need a bit of explanation, because I got to be honest, at the time of reading this originally, I didn't like the ending to this story. I know that Marvel like to leave things open, but there was no announcement to a sequel when I originally read this book. Now, however, because they've got Return of the Living Deadpool in the works, I'm actually happy with how this miniseries ended. But to keep things fair, because of those mixed feelings, I'm only going to score the conclusion a 10 out of 20. So, for those of you who've been paying attention and can count, you will know that this gives us a score of 81 out of 100. So therefore, Night of the Living Deadpool gets a score of 8 out of 10. Anyway guys, I'm the Emerald Patriot. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my review of Night of the Living Deadpool. If you want to see more videos like this, please take a bite out of that subscribe button, and I will catch you next time. Until then, take it easy.